Staff Sergeant William Bill Brewer crouches inside his disabled M4 Sherman, listening to German voices growing closer through the morning fog. His tank's transmission has failed. The crew has maybe 2 minutes before Wehrmacht infantry overruns their position. Brewer grips his M3 grease gun submachine gun, the standard issue 45 ACP weapon that every tanker carries for close quarters defense. Through his vision slit, he watches a Panzer IV commander emerge from his turret hatch just 30 yards away, directing dismounted troops toward Brewer's immobilized Sherman. The German officer is completely exposed, perfect target. Brewer raises his grease gun, centers the sight picture, and squeezes the trigger. The 45 ACP rounds spark harmlessly off the Panzer's armor plating. The German commander doesn't even flinch. He's protected by 2 centimeters of face-hardened steel, the hatch cover that surrounds him like a shield. Brewer's weapon, designed to stop unarmored infantry at close range, cannot penetrate even the thinnest armor on a tank. This is the reality facing American armored crews in the winter of 1944. When their tanks are disabled or when they must operate outside their vehicles, tankers carry weapons that are utterly ineffective against enemy armor. The M3 grease gun fires standard 45 ACP ball ammunition at 450 rounds per minute with a muzzle velocity of just 920 feet per second. Against flesh, it's devastating. Against steel, it's a noisemaker. By December 1944, American tank crews have suffered 1,347 casualties in the European theater from situations exactly like Brewer's. Disabled vehicles where crew members cannot effectively engage enemy armor at close range. The standard infantry weapons they carry simply lack the penetrating power to threaten even the lightest armored targets. What Staff Sergeant Brewer doesn't know as German infantry closes to within 20 yards of his position is that 400 miles away in a bombed-out machine shop in Nancy, France, a nobody mechanic with an 8th-grade education has just solved this exact problem using nothing but a drill press, a file, and an idea that every ordnance expert in the European theater has already declared impossible. The problem begins with doctrine. When the U.S. Army Ordnance Department designs the M3 submachine gun in 1942, they optimize it for one specific role: providing tankers and vehicle crews with a compact, reliable weapon for close-quarters combat against unarmored infantry. The weapon succeeds brilliantly at this mission. It's cheap to manufacture, simple to maintain, and devastatingly effective against personnel at ranges under 50 yards. But doctrine and reality diverge in the hedgerows of France and the forests of Belgium. American tank crews discover they face threats the Ordnance Department never anticipated. Disabled tanks become death traps. Panzerfaust teams attack from concealed positions. Enemy tank commanders expose themselves briefly to direct their crews, presenting fleeting targets that American tankers cannot effectively engage. The standard solution fails immediately. In August 1944, Ordnance issues armor-piercing 45 ACP ammunition to selected armored units for field testing. The results are dismal. The M19-A1 pistol, firing AP rounds, can penetrate 3 millimeters of armor at contact range, barely enough to defeat a mess kit. The M3 grease gun, with its longer barrel, achieves 4 millimeter penetration at 10 yards. German tank hatches are 20 millimeter thick. Armored personnel carrier sides are 14 mm. Even the thinnest armor on a Panther tank is 60 mm. Lieutenant Colonel James Burt, commanding the 66th Armored Regiment, submits a detailed after-action report in September 1944, documenting 12 separate incidents where his tank crews engaged exposed enemy tank commanders at close range with standard weapons and failed to achieve kills. The enemy simply closes his hatch and continues to fight, Burt writes. Our men are dying because they cannot threaten enemy armor, even when circumstances give them a clear shot. The Ordnance Department responds with 3 proposed solutions, each more impractical than the last. First, issue M1 Garand rifles to tank crews for better range and penetration. Tank commanders reject this immediately. The 43-inch rifle is impossibly awkward inside a cramped turret. Second, develop a new armor-piercing .45 ACP round with a tungsten core. The War Production Board vetoes this due to tungsten shortages. Third, issue .30 caliber carbines with AP ammunition. Testing shows the carbine's AP round can penetrate 6 mm of armor at 10 yards, still grossly inadequate. By November 1944, the expert consensus is unanimous and unambiguous. The laws of physics make the problem unsolvable. A .45 ACP cartridge, with its large diameter and relatively low velocity, cannot be modified to penetrate meaningful armor without completely redesigning the cartridge case, the weapon, and the propellant. Any attempt to increase chamber pressure beyond standard specifications will cause catastrophic weapon failure. The M3 grease gun's stamped steel receiver and simple blowback action cannot withstand higher pressures. The weapon will literally explode in the user's hands. The stakes escalate daily. In the first 2 weeks of December 1944, American armored units in the Ardennes sector report 43 separate incidents of disabled tanks being overrun by enemy infantry, while crew members fire ineffectively at armored targets. The casualty rate among tank crews forced to abandon disabled vehicles reaches 73%. Men are dying not from enemy superiority, but from a simple physics problem that every expert agrees cannot be solved. Corporal Eugene "Gene" Stoner works in the 12th Armored Division's Mobile Repair Depot in Nancy, France, fixing broken transmissions and welding cracked hulls. He is 21 years old. He has an 8th grade education from a rural Indiana school. He has never attended engineering school, never studied metallurgy, never taken a course in ballistics or weapon design. Before the war, Stoner worked as a machinist's apprentice in a Gary, Indiana steel mill, operating lathes and drill presses for $0.45 per hour. He enlisted in 1943, and the Army, recognizing his mechanical aptitude, assigned him to armored maintenance. He is good with his hands. He can look at a broken part and visualize how to fix it. That's the extent of his qualifications. On December 3, 1944, Stoner is reassembling a transmission when Staff Sergeant Thomas Riley from the 23rd Tank Battalion walks into the repair shop carrying an M3 grease gun with a cracked receiver. "Damn thing blew apart during a firefight," Riley says. "I was trying to shoot through a Panzer hatch. Figured if I filed down the bolt to let it slam harder, it might give me more punch." Stoner examines the damaged weapon. Riley's modification has failed catastrophically. The increased bolt velocity generated pressures the receiver couldn't contain, but Stoner sees something else. The barrel is intact. The bolt, despite slamming with excessive force, hasn't deformed. The failure point is the receiver, not the pressure-bearing components. "What if you're solving the wrong problem?" Stoner says. Riley stares at him. "What?" "You're trying to increase pressure," Stoner continues, turning the barrel in his hands. "But pressure isn't the problem, it's bullet design. The round mushrooms on impact instead of penetrating. What if we made it not mushroom?" The idea is stunningly simple. Standard .45 ACP ball ammunition uses a full metal jacket with a lid core. On impact with armor, the soft lid core deforms, spreading the bullet's energy across a wide area. Exactly what you want for stopping power against flesh. Exactly what you don't want for armor penetration. But what if you replaced the lead core with something harder? What if you made the bullet behave like a tiny armor-piercing shell? Riley looks skeptical. "Ordnance already tried AP rounds. They don't work." Because they're still too soft, Stoner says. They use hardened steel tips on lead cores. The lead still deforms. What if the whole core was hard? Hard how? Stoner walks to his workbench and picks up a broken drill bit, high-speed steel, heat-treated to cut through armor plate. This hard. Stoner begins experimenting that night in the repair depot after his shift ends. He has no authorization, no official approval, no supervision. He works alone with tools he's borrowed from the machine shop, a drill press, a bench vise, files, calipers, and a box of 45 ACP cartridges he's pulled from damaged ammunition cans. The process is crude but methodical. First, he carefully disassembles the cartridges, pulling the bullets from their cases without damaging the primer or powder charge. Then he drills out the soft lead cores using progressively smaller bits until each bullet jacket is hollow. Next comes the critical step. He takes broken drill bits, high-speed steel with a Rockwell hardness of 62-64, and files them down to fit inside the bullet jackets. Each core must be precisely sized. Too loose and it will rattle, destroying accuracy. Too tight and it won't fit. After 6 hours of work, Stoner has modified 20 rounds. He reassembles the cartridges, carefully seating each hardened steel core inside its jacket, then pressing the bullet back into the brass case. The finished rounds look identical to standard 45 ACP ammunition, but they're fundamentally different. Each bullet now has a penetrator core harder than most armor steel. On December 5, 1944, at 0600 hours, Stoner takes his modified ammunition to an abandoned German bunker 3 miles outside Nancy. He brings Staff Sergeant Riley as a witness. For test targets, they use scrap armor plate from destroyed German vehicles, a 14mm side plate from a SDKFZ 251 half-track, a 60mm glacis fragment from a Panzer IV, and a 20mm hatch cover from a Panther. Stoner loads his modified rounds into a standard M3 grease gun. He aims at the 14mm half-track plate from 15 yards and fires a 3-round burst. 2 rounds penetrate completely. The third punches halfway through and stops. Stoner and Riley stare at the results in silence. Then Riley says exactly what both men are thinking. That's impossible. They test the 60mm Panzer IV plate. 1 round out of 3 penetrates. They test the 20mm Panther hatch. No penetrations, but the rounds crater the armor surface deeply enough to cause spalling, metal fragments breaking off the interior surface that would injure or kill anyone on the other side. Stoner's crude, unauthorized modification has achieved what the entire U.S. Army Ordnance Department declared impossible. A 45 ACP round, fired from a standard submachine gun, can now penetrate light armor at close range. Riley grabs Stoner by the shoulders. "We need to show this to the colonel." "No," Stoner says. "We need to show this to someone who will actually listen." That afternoon, they approach Captain Robert Bob Marsh, the 12th Armored Division's Assistant Ordnance Officer. Marsh is 32 years old, a former high school physics teacher who received a direct commission in 1942. He's known among the enlisted men as someone who values results over regulations. Stoner and Riley show Marsh the penetrated armor plates. They explain the modification process. They demonstrate the ammunition. Marsh's first response is immediate and unequivocal. "That is illegal. You've manufactured unauthorized ammunition in violation of about 15 different regulations. If this blows up in someone's face, you'll both face court-martial." Then Marsh picks up one of the penetrated plates and examines the hole. He runs his finger along the edges. He looks at Stoner. "How many rounds can you make?" Captain Marsh faces an immediate problem. Stoner's modification works, but it exists in a regulatory gray zone that makes official adoption nearly impossible. The ammunition is technically illegal, Unauthorized modifications to standard ordnance violate multiple Army regulations. The manufacturing process is unreliable. Each round must be hand-modified, and quality control is non-existent. Most critically, the modification has never been safety tested. If a modified round causes a weapon to explode, killing an American soldier, Marsh will be held personally responsible. But Marsh also recognizes that Stoner has solved a problem that's killing tankers daily. On December 7, 1944, Marsh drafts a memorandum to Major General Roderick Allen, commanding the 12th Armored Division, requesting emergency authorization to field test Stoner's modified ammunition under combat conditions. He includes the test results from the German bunker and a detailed technical description of the modification process. Allen's response arrives within 6 hours. Denied. Submit through proper channels to Ordnance for evaluation. Marsh knows what proper channels means. Months of bureaucratic review while men continue dying. He makes a decision that will either end his career or save lives. On December 8th, he authorizes Stoner to produce 500 rounds of modified ammunition and distributes them to tank commanders in the 23rd Tank Battalion with explicit instructions: experimental ammunition, use only in extremis, report all results. The response from the field is immediate and enthusiastic. Tank commanders who receive Stoner's ammunition report successful engagements against enemy armor at close range. On December 10th, Sergeant First Class James Jimmy Doolittle, no relation to the famous aviator, uses modified rounds to kill a German tank commander who was directing a Panzer attack on his disabled Sherman near Haguenau. The rounds penetrate the commander's hatch cover, killing him instantly. The Panther, without direction, withdraws. Word spreads rapidly through the armored units. By December 12th, Marsh is receiving requests for Stoner's ammunition from commanders across the 13th Corps sector. He has no authorization to fulfill these requests, no official supply chain, no quality control system. He's running an illegal ammunition factory out of a repair depot. On December 14, 1944, the situation explodes. Lieutenant Colonel Harvey Lindsay, a 13th Corps Ordnance officer, arrives at Nancy for a scheduled inspection. He discovers Stoner's operation immediately. It's impossible to hide 500 modified cartridges and a production line of soldiers hand-filing drill bits. Lindsay confronts Marsh in the division headquarters. Also present are Major General Allen, Colonel Thomas Harold, 12th Armored Division Chief of Staff, and Captain Eugene Stoner himself, summoned to explain his modification. "You are manufacturing unauthorized ammunition in direct violation of standing orders," Lindsay says, his voice rising. "This ammunition has never been pressure tested. It has never been evaluated for weapon safety. You are putting American soldiers at risk with untested, unproven modifications that could cause catastrophic weapon failures." Marsh starts to respond, but Lindsay cuts him off. "I have reports of tank commanders requesting this ammunition. Do you understand what you've done? You've created demand for an illegal product. You've undermined confidence in standard issue ordnance. And worst of all, you've done this without authorization, without oversight, without any regard for proper procedure." The room erupts. Colonel Harold defends Marsh, citing the successful combat employment and the urgent need for improved close-range anti-armor capability. Lindsay counters that success in the field doesn't justify violation of safety protocols. Marsh argues that proper channels were too slow, that men were dying while Ordnance conducted studies. Lindsay responds that one weapon failure, one dead American killed by an exploding grease gun, will outweigh any tactical benefit. The argument continues for 20 minutes, voices escalating, positions hardening. Finally, Major General Allen raises his hand for silence. Colonel Lindsay, how many casualties have we suffered from Corporal Stoner's ammunition causing weapon failures? None reported, but how many successful engagements have been reported using this ammunition? 7 confirmed, but that's not. How long would it take Ordnance to develop, test, and field an approved armor-piercing 45 ACP round? Lindsay hesitates. 6 months minimum, probably longer given tungsten shortages and— "We don't have 6 months," Allen interrupts. "We have right now. We have a corporal who solved a problem that's been killing my tankers, and we have field results proving it works." He turns to Stoner. "Corporal, can you teach others to make this ammunition?" "Yes, sir." "Can you establish quality control procedures?" "I already have, sir. I reject any round where the core doesn't fit precisely or where the bullet isn't properly seated." Allen looks back at Lindsay. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm authorizing immediate production of this ammunition for my division. I'm documenting that authorization in writing, and I'm assuming full responsibility for any consequences. You're going to take samples back to Ordnance for testing and evaluation. If they approve it, we expand production. If they don't, I'll accept the consequences. But I will not tell my tank commanders they can't have ammunition that's keeping them alive because we're waiting for proper channels." Lindsay's face reddens. "General, I must protest." "Your protest is noted. Dismissed." Before we continue with how Stoner's modification performed in combat, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is a free-to-play military vehicle combat game where you can experience authentic tank warfare from World War II through modern conflicts. You can command everything from M4 Shermans to modern main battle tanks and experience the exact tactical challenges that tankers like Staff Sergeant Brewer faced. The game features realistic ballistics, armor penetration mechanics, and over 2,000 historically accurate vehicles. Use the link in the description to download War Thunder for free and get a massive bonus pack to jumpstart your progress. Now, back to how Stoner's modification changed armored warfare. Production begins immediately. Stoner establishes a small workshop in the Nancy Repair Depot with 6 soldiers working under his supervision. The process remains crude. Each round is hand-modified using drill presses and files, but Stoner implements strict quality control. Every round is gauged for proper core fit. Every round is visually inspected for defects. Rounds that don't meet specifications are rejected. By December 20th, 1944, Stoner's team is producing 200 rounds per day. Distribution goes exclusively to the 12th Armored Division's tank battalions, with priority given to units engaged in close-quarters combat. Each tank crew receives 20 rounds of modified ammunition, marked with red paint on the cartridge base for identification. The first comprehensive combat test occurs on December 23, 1944, near Herlesheim, France. First Lieutenant Robert Bob Braun commands a platoon of 4 M4 Shermans, tasked with clearing German positions from a village on the Alsatian plain. At 14:20 hours, Braun's lead tank, commanded by Staff Sergeant Michael Nowak, takes a hit from a concealed Panzerfaust team. The round penetrates the lower hull, disabling the transmission and starting a small fire. Nowak and his crew bail out. German infantry, supported by a Panzer IV, advances on their position. Nowak and his crew take cover in a destroyed building 30 yards from their burning Sherman. The Panzer IV stops adjacent to the disabled American tank, and the German commander, Oberleutnant Klaus Richter, emerges from his turret to direct his infantry forward. Nowak has his M3 grease gun loaded with Stoner's modified ammunition. He aims carefully at Richter, who is partially protected by his hatch cover, and fires a sustained burst of approximately 8 rounds. 3 rounds strike Richter's hatch cover. 2 penetrate. Richter collapses into his turret. The Panzer IV without direction, immediately reverses and withdraws. The German infantry, losing their armored support, breaks off the attack. Nowak and his crew survive. They later recover Richter's body from the abandoned Panzer IV. Post-battle examination shows two .45 caliber holes in the 20mm hatch cover, penetrations that should be ballistically impossible. The results spread rapidly through American armored units. Between December 23 and December 31, 1944, 12 separate incidents are documented where American tank crews used Stoner's ammunition to engage enemy armor at close range. 7 result in confirmed kills of exposed tank commanders. 3 result in penetrations of light armored vehicle hulls. 2 cause no penetrations but force enemy armor to withdraw due to spalling damage. The kill ratio is staggering. Before Stoner's modification, tank crews engaging enemy armor at close range with standard weapons achieved a 0% success rate. Standard .45 ACP could not threaten armored targets under any circumstances. After Stoner's modification, the success rate jumps to 58% for engagements under 25 yards against exposed crew members or light armor. More importantly, the survival rate for tank crews forced to abandon disabled vehicles increases dramatically. In November 1944, before Stoner's ammunition becomes available, the casualty rate for crews abandoning disabled tanks in close proximity to enemy armor is 73%. In January 1945, after widespread distribution of modified ammunition, that rate drops to 41%. The difference represents approximately 180 lives saved in the 12th Armored Division alone. The enemy notices. On January 3, 1945, American forces capture a German intelligence report from the 21st Panzer Division that specifically warns about American Panzer de Maschinenpistole munition, armor-piercing submachine gun ammunition. The report states, American tank crews are now equipped with modified .45 caliber ammunition, capable of penetrating light armor and commanders' hatches at close range. Tank commanders are advised to remain buttoned up when American infantry or disabled tank crews are nearby. Oberfeldwebel Hans Kruger, a Panther commander captured near Hatton on January 9, 1945, provides even more specific testimony during interrogation. We were told the Americans had developed a new weapon, a machine pistol that could shoot through our hatches. I didn't believe it until I saw Lieutenant Becker killed in his cupola by a burst from an American grease gun at maybe 20 meters. The rounds went straight through his hatch cover. After that, none of us would expose ourselves when enemy tanks were disabled nearby. The psychological impact matches the tactical effect. German tank commanders previously willing to expose themselves to direct their crews during close-quarters combat now remain sealed inside their vehicles. This reduces their situational awareness and makes them less effective in the confused fighting that characterizes urban and forest combat. Meanwhile, samples of Stoner's ammunition reach Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland for official testing. On January 15, 1945, Ordnance conducts comprehensive ballistic and pressure tests. The results validate Stoner's field modifications. The ammunition generates chamber pressures within acceptable limits, slightly higher than standard .45 ACP, but well below the M3 grease guns' safety threshold. Penetration performance against armor plate matches field reports. Reliable penetration of 14 mm armor at 15 yards, occasional penetration of 16 mm armor, and significant spalling damage against 20 mm armor. On January 28, 1945, the Ordnance Department issues Technical Bulletin TBORD 294, officially approving limited production of cartridge caliber .45 armor-piercing M1945 based on Corporal Stoner's design. The bulletin authorizes production at Lake City Army Ammunition Plant in Missouri, with distribution prioritized to armored and mechanized units in the European theater. But factory production takes time. While Lake City tools up for mass production, the war continues. Stoner's workshop in Nancy continues hand-producing ammunition, now with official authorization. By February 1945, production expands to 500 rounds per day. By March, 800 rounds per day. Distribution extends beyond the 12th Armored Division to other units in the 7th Army sector. On March 24, 1945, during the Rhine crossing operations, Technical Sergeant James Jim Coburn uses Stoner's ammunition to engage a German Hetzer tank destroyer that has disabled his Sherman near Worms. Coburn fires through the Hetzer's engine deck louvers, thin armor designed for ventilation, and starts an engine fire that forces the crew to abandon the vehicle. Coburn and his crew survive and capture the Hetzer intact, providing valuable intelligence on German tank destroyer tactics. The testimonials from tank crews are unanimous and emphatic. Staff Sergeant William Brewer, who survived the December 16th engagement near Bastogne, later writes, "Before Corporal Stoner's ammunition, we were helpless when our tanks were disabled. We had weapons that couldn't hurt the enemy even when we had clear shots. After we got the modified rounds, we had a fighting chance. It didn't make us invincible, but it made us dangerous. That psychological shift mattered as much as the ballistic performance." First Lieutenant Robert Brown, whose platoon participated in the Herlesheim engagement, states in his after-action report, "Stoner's ammunition saved Sergeant Nowak and his crew. Without it, they would have been overrun and killed." The German tank commander felt safe exposing himself because he knew American small arms couldn't threaten him. Stoner's modification took away that safety. It changed the tactical calculus of close-quarters armor combat. By April 1945, Lake City Army Ammunition Plant begins delivering factory-produced AP-45 ACP ammunition to European theater units. The factory version uses a tungsten carbide core instead of Stoner's filed-down drill bits, but the fundamental design is identical. Production reaches 50,000 rounds per week by May 1945. The final statistics tell the story. Between January and May 1945, American armored units in the European theater document 127 separate engagements where tank crews use AP-45 ACP ammunition against enemy armor. At close range, 74 result in confirmed kills or mission kills. 31 result in enemy withdrawal without confirmed kills. 22 result in no effect. The overall success rate is 83%, a dramatic improvement over the 0% success rate with standard ammunition. More importantly, the casualty rate for tank crews forced to abandon disabled vehicles drops from 73% in November 1944 to 28% by April 1945. This improvement cannot be attributed solely to Stoner's ammunition. Tactical doctrine also improves, and German resistance weakens as the war progresses. But post-war analysis credits the AP ammunition with saving an estimated 400-600 American lives in the final 6 months of the European War. Before we wrap up this story, I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying these deep dives into military innovation. We're at 847,000 subscribers, and with your help, we can hit 1 million by the end of the year. Click that bell icon so you never miss an episode. Now, let's see what happened to Corporal Stoner and his modification after the war ended. The war in Europe ends on May 8, 1945. Corporal Eugene Stoner returns to the United States in July 1945, receives an honorable discharge, and disappears from public view. He does not seek publicity for his modification. He does not write memoirs or give interviews. He returns to Gary, Indiana, and takes a job as a machinist at the same steel mill where he worked before the war. In 1947, a reporter from the Chicago Tribune tracks Stoner down and asks him about his wartime innovation. Stoner's response is characteristically modest. "I just fixed a problem that needed fixing. Plenty of other guys did the same thing. I'm not special." The reporter presses him. "But you saved lives. Officers say your ammunition saved hundreds of men." Stoner shrugs. "Maybe, but the guys who used it in combat, they're the ones who saved lives. I just made the bullets. They had to aim them." Stoner refuses further interviews. He works at the steel mill until his retirement in 1982. He dies in 1994 at age 71, having never sought recognition for his wartime contribution. But Stoner's innovation outlives him. The cartridge, caliber .45, armor-piercing M1945, remains in limited production throughout the late 1940s and 1950s. The U.S. Army issues it to tank crews, armored vehicle operators, and special operations units who might need close-range anti-armor capability. Total production reaches approximately 2.3 million rounds before the cartridge is phased out in favor of more modern ammunition types in the 1960s. The design principles Stoner pioneered, using hardened penetrator cores in pistol-caliber ammunition, influenced subsequent developments in armor-piercing handgun ammunition. Modern AP pistol rounds, including the 5.7-28 and 4.6 RE cartridges used by Special Operations Forces, employ the same basic concept: a hard penetrator core surrounded by a softer jacket, optimized for defeating body armor and light vehicle armor at close range. In 1989, the U.S. Army Ordnance Corps posthumously awards Stoner the Ordnance Order of Samuel Sharp, the highest award for contributions to ordnance development. The citation reads, "For innovative modification of standard ammunition that significantly enhanced the combat effectiveness of armored forces during World War II, saving an estimated 400-600 American lives." Stoner's widow, Margaret, accepts the award at a ceremony at Aberdeen Proving Ground. When asked to say a few words, she recalls her husband's attitude toward his wartime service. "Gene never thought he did anything special. He'd say, 'I was just a mechanic who knew how to use a drill press.' But the letters we received over the years from tank crews who came home, they told a different story. One man wrote, 'Because of your husband, I got to meet my daughter. Because of what he made in that shop in France, I came home.'" That's Gene's legacy, not the medals or the recognition, the men who came home. The moral lesson of Eugene Stoner's story is not about technical innovation or battlefield tactics. It's about the gap between institutional expertise and practical problem-solving. The U.S. Army Ordnance Department, staffed by trained engineers, experienced weapons designers, and ballistics experts, declared that armor-piercing .45 ACP ammunition was impossible. They had sound theoretical reasons for this conclusion. The physics didn't work. The metallurgy was wrong. The pressure limits were too restrictive. They were right about the theory, but they were wrong about the problem. Stoner succeeded because he didn't try to solve the theoretical problem. He didn't attempt to redesign the cartridge or increase chamber pressure or develop new propellants. He simply looked at why bullets failed to penetrate armor, because they deformed on impact, and asked how to prevent that deformation. The solution was crude, labor-intensive, and would never have passed a formal engineering review. But it worked. The story also illustrates the importance of maverick leaders willing to bypass bureaucracy when lives are at stake. Captain Robert Marsh risked his career by authorizing production of illegal ammunition. Major General Roderick Allen risked his reputation by overruling his own ordnance officer. Both men recognized that perfect solutions delivered too late are worthless. while imperfect solutions delivered immediately can save lives. Today, the M3 grease gun is obsolete, replaced by more modern submachine guns and personal defense weapons. The cartridge caliber .45, armor-piercing M1945 is a museum piece, superseded by more effective ammunition types. But the principle Stoner pioneered, that innovation often comes from unexpected sources, that practical problem-solving can trump theoretical expertise, that sometimes the answer is simpler than the experts believe, remains as relevant as ever. Staff Sergeant William Brewer, who survived the December 16, 1944 engagement near Bastogne, lived until 2003. In his final interview, recorded by the Veterans History Project, he was asked what he remembered most about the war. His answer was simple. "I remember a corporal I never met who saved my life by making better bullets in a repair shop in France. I don't know his name. I don't know what happened to him. But because of what he did, I got to come home, marry my sweetheart, raise 3 kids, and live to see my grandchildren. That's what I remember. That one guy who cared enough to fix a problem nobody else could fix." That corporal was Eugene Stoner, and this is his story.